Good afternoon, good evening, good morning to everyone wherever you're listening to me. I want to thank you for joining me here on another video. Today, I want to continue talking about the American dream and why I don't believe in such a thing. Just to recap a little what I talked about on my first video, if you have not seen it, I've talked about how even before this was declared an independent country, how we had slaves and we tortured them, and over the years we segregated people. We considered people less than humans. We didn't. I know I didn't touch upon this on that video, but I do want to mention a few things here before I continue with this topic, which is interesting. Look, because of the pandemic that we had a few years ago, we didn't notice a few things, and which I want to remind you of, just to show you that we are not who we say we are, and how the American dream can be interpreted for some, but others can interpret it as an American nightmare, if you will. Because as I said in my first video, it shouldn't be this hard to achieve, quote, the American dream. So when this country was finally gained its independence back in 1776, there were some people that were able to vote, but not others. I wonder why. Doesn't the Constitution say we the people? But who were we the people? Who was it referring to? Because let me tell you, it wasn't the entire country, as there were some people, as I said before, that were not considered people. They were not able to vote. So there's a discrepancy with that phrase, we the people, because it's not talking about we the people. It was only until, what was it? Close to over 100 years. Well, let me backtrack for a bit. So again, it was 1776. There were slaves before that, and even slaves after that. And finally, after getting mistreated a little bit before reaching the 100 years of its independence, the United States finally freed the slaves via a civil war. And this did not in any way meant that there was an ending to the suffering of black people. It was only the beginning, or it was only the continuation. What happened then was that these people began to be segregated, began to be ostracized, began to be humiliated in more than one way. These people couldn't vote. These people were still illiterate, right? These people had a hard time getting to a lot of the things, getting a lot of things that they wanted to get. And a lot of people would say, well, that happened, I don't know, 200 years ago, 300 years ago. Move on with your life. This would be easy if we were talking about just a small group of people. But it's a large group of people who we have damaged, and we have not apologized as we should. But let's say that we did. What can you tell me then about the other group that I mentioned as well on my first video, which was people with disabilities? But before that, let me talk about women. That's another group who we have hurt a lot. And a lot of women perhaps don't know that they didn't get the chance to vote until 1920, I believe. That was more than 100 years, perhaps like close to, let me think, close to 200 years almost. If I'm not doing my math correctly, please let me know. But after 150 years of its independence, the United States didn't give women the right to vote. That's right, from 1776 until 1920. Close to 150 years without voting. So, again, who is or who are we the people? Because it wasn't certainly women that we were talking about here. And finally, but obviously they're not the only group, people with disabilities. Do you know when we finally got the chance to be seen? Do you know how long it took for us to finally get some recognition, for people to actually pay attention to us? It was until 1990. Sure, there were other laws that were passed that somehow tried to help us out, but total accessibility didn't came until 1990. This was over 200 years after the United States gained its independence. And more than 30 years have passed ever since that law. And it has not changed a bit. It's as if we were stuck in 1990. Because with all the websites, with all the things that we have, we are still segregated. We are still ostracized. Just as blacks, just as women, just as Native Americans, just as the LGBT community. And if aliens were to come to Earth, I would imagine that they will be ostracized as well. If you don't think like us, if you don't walk like us, if you don't look like us, or if you don't do whatever is done in this country. This is what this country has become. So I leave you with this. I'm going to make a third video. Whose dream is it? Because the American dream is certainly not my dream. The American dream for me has become the American nightmare. It's become something that is frustrating, something that I have tried to reach for, and it's been none others than Americans that have pushed me away and said, you can't do this because you have a disability. You're stealing my piece of the pie. You're preventing me from achieving my dream. I thought that to achieve a dream, we were all supposed to help one another. This is why I've always considered the America to be a bit selfish, to have a lot of arrogance. I've always considered the United States with a big ego, and that it will run over anybody who they seem seen as a threat, somebody who's trying to take their spotlight. But that's just me. I will continue with this series on a third video. I want to thank you so much for joining me. I want to thank you so much for subscribing. I want to thank you very much for your comments, and I will talk to you next time.